Good afternoon, and welcome to True Crime Voice for the Voiceless. Hi, I'm Maria. Was this a random act, or was this calculated? Today we're going to discuss the Kevin Guion Ivy League case. Now let's get to it. December 11th of 2020 on Huntington Street in New Haven, Connecticut, there were reports of gunshots in the area. It hit a house multiple times. There were people inside, but thank goodness nobody was hurt. When the police arrived, they found 45 caliber shell casings at the scene. A month later, on January 15th of 2021, there was a second shooting that occurred at another home. Again, nobody was injured. Now, on February 5th, there was another shooting. This was the third shooting at a home in a few months. A fourth shooting happened on February 6th, just a day later. Once again, somebody was home, but nobody was injured. There were 5 rounds shot at the house. When the police showed up, they found 45 caliber shell casings. Now, this was 4 shootings in a few months, and the investigators were concerned that at some point someone's going to get injured or even worse. They realized that the shootings had one thing in common. They all had 45 caliber shell casings left at the scenes. Now the investigators had more to go on. A black SUV was spotted leaving the last 2 shootings. Now on that same day, Saturday, February 6th of 2021, 26-year-old graduate student Kevin Guion and Jiang Perry, his fiancée, spent the day hiking and ice fishing. They both enjoyed the outdoors very much. After hanging out all day, they went to Zion's home in East Rock, New Haven, to have dinner. Around 8:30 p.m. that night, Kevin left her apartment to head home. When Kevin was about 2 blocks away, his Prius was hit from behind by a dark SUV. Kevin exited his car and walked toward the SUV, most likely to exchange information and to make sure that the driver was okay. As Kevin got closer to the SUV, the driver shot him 8 times. Some of the bullets were fired so close to his head that it left gunpowder burns on his face. 911 received numerous calls from different residents that they heard the gunshots. When the officers arrived, they found Kevin Guion deceased on the ground. They found 8 45 caliber shell casings on the ground near him. One of the 911 callers stated they seen a dark-colored SUV leaving the scene. The investigators felt it may have been personal because of how he was shot and how brutal it was. They learned that Kevin was a former lieutenant in the Army National Guard. He was deeply religious and had just proposed to Zion a week earlier. They met at a Christian retreat. One of the neighbors' ring cameras showed a dark SUV hit the back of Kevin's Prius. Then it backed up out of the camera's view. You could hear Kevin getting shot. It was actually horrifying to listen to. The investigators did not have a lot of evidence at this point, and they couldn't understand who would want to unalive Kevin. Everyone they spoke to had nothing but good things to say about him. He was always happy. He loved helping others. He had his mother move in with him so he could take care of her. He didn't want her living alone. He was said to be a gentle and kind soul. While investigating, they spoke to different residents. One resident stated that they heard shots and they looked out their window. They seen a subject wearing all black and standing over an individual laying on the ground. She heard another round of shots and seen a flash come from the muzzle of the gun. Then investigators definitely feel this was personal. They sent all the 45 caliber shell casings they found at the 4 homes of the shootings, as well as the ones they found by Kevin, to the lab to be analyzed. They all came back as matches to the casings that were found at the homicide. Now, the investigators were wondering if this had been an act of road rage that turned violent. Or was his car hit on purpose to get him out of the car? Was this planned? Was he targeted? If he was, why? Unfortunately, the investigators had to go notify Kevin's mother. When she heard of what happened, she fell to the ground. She was in complete shock. She proceeded to tell the investigators what a wonderful son he was. That in 2019, he bought a house in Hendrickson and asked her to live with him. She wanted to know who would do this and why. The investigators went and spoke with Zion, Kevin's fiance. She told them that he left her home at 8:30 that night, and she remembered hearing gunshots. But it never crossed her mind that he might be anywhere near the shots. She had no idea who would have done something like this. The investigators were at a loss. They couldn't figure out who would do this to Kevin and why. But then the next day, they found out that 911 had received 2 different calls. The first 911 received was from a security guard from a local scrapyard around 9 p.m. that night that Kevin was unalived. The gentleman stated a dark SUV went speeding past him in the yard, so he started following it. The car ended up getting stuck on a railroad track in the snow. So Officer Miller and another officer showed up and found the driver stuck. The driver told him that he got lost and then he got stuck. He actually asked them if they could help him get his car off the railroad tracks. Officer Miller noticed a yellow jacket on the passenger seat. He also noticed a blue bag and a briefcase in the back seat. The officer asked him for his identification. He was 29-year-old Shinshan Pan from Massachusetts. Now, from this point on, I'm going to just refer to him as Pan. Officer Miller told him, the only thing I can do for you is call a tow truck. How about you stay in a hotel for the night? We'll have the tow truck driver drop you off and you can get your car in the morning. At first, he really didn't want to do that, but he realized he didn't really have a choice because the car was very stuck. Now, Officer Miller hadn't heard about Kevin's unaliving, so he wasn't particularly concerned about Pan being stuck out there, because apparently a lot of people get lost and have gotten stuck in that area. So the tow truck driver got his car out and dropped him off at a Best Western in North Haven. A few hours later, February 7th, around 11 a.m., 911 received a second call. When the officers arrived to the Arby's, the employee had found 3 bags on the grass at the north entrance. Now, when Officer Miller got to the location, he noticed that one of the bags was a blue retail bag with a Massachusetts logo on it and a small leather black briefcase. Instantly, the officer realized he had seen these items before. Those were the bags he had seen the night before when he was talking to Pan, the man that was stuck on the railroad tracks. The Arby's was right next door to the Best Western, where Pan was dropped off. By then, Officer Miller heard about the homicide of Kevin in New Haven. The officer started putting things together and went to the Best Western to see if Pan had checked in. The attendant stated that he had checked in, but he hadn't checked out yet. So Officer Miller contacted the New Haven homicide and told them about Pan. They believe they may have a connection. The car matched the description they had, and the .45 caliber shell casings matched the ones left at the scene. The detectives met Officer Miller at the Best Western. They got a room key to room 276. They went and knocked on the door. No one answered, so they entered the room. It was clean. It looked like nobody had ever stayed there. One of the investigators went to the residence that was on Pan's driver's license. It was in Malden, Massachusetts. When they arrived to the location, nobody answered the door. There was no one home. Pan was a graduate from MIT. The investigators started getting a little bit concerned because they're like, okay, where is everybody? Is there anybody in the house, or is there a problem? Did something happen to them too? So the detective started looking up on social media to see if he could find Pan. to see if there was any connection between Pan and Kevin. He didn't find any connection. Kevin was not on his friends list, and they did not attend the same college. It showed the last time that Pan had been on his Facebook was in 2016. But Zion Perry, Kevin's fiance, was on Pan's friends list. And she also went to MIT. They now have a connection. The detective went to Zion's home and spoke with her. She stated that her and Pan had met back in 2019 at MIT, and they were more associates than friends. She said they never dated and never had a romantic relationship. They never even had a date. The last time she spoke with Pan was May of 2020. He contacted her on Facebook Messenger to congratulate her for graduating. He then asked her if she would FaceTime with him, and she politely told him no. She had no idea why the detectives were asking all these questions about Pan. He stated to her that Pan was a person of interest. She was completely shocked. He was barely a part of her life. And why would he have been involved in something like this? It made no sense to her. Another thing, the last thing that she posted on her Facebook was the engagement of her and Kevin. Now, the detectives definitely do not think this was a random act. They are starting to wonder if this was a secret obsession of Pan's, and Kevin and Zion were unaware of it. Kevin was buried with full military honors just 2 days before his 27th birthday on Valentine's Day. The detectives found out that Pan was a graduate student in artificial intelligence and had a degree in computer science. He was said to be a genius, but in his social life, not so much. This gave them some concern because this guy is extremely smart. They discovered that he had 3 active phones. They figured out that he used one of the phones to call dealerships. He told all the different dealerships that he was doing test drives, and they believe he used those vehicles to do the crimes. The detectives were able to match the dates of all the test drives with each shooting in New Haven, including the night Kevin was unalived. They started putting things together and believed Pan was shooting at houses to mislead the authorities, so that when he shot Kevin, they wouldn't put it together that it was connected, and that they would think it was just some random act or some road rage. The odd thing is that they were looking at it at a potential road rage. During their investigation, they discovered that Pan called his parents, and they made a cash withdrawal of about $1,000. Now, his parents had access to a lot of money from Shanghai. The detectives were keeping track of Pan's parents and their cell phones. All of a sudden, their phones started moving out of the area, but then it just turned off. They tracked it to North Carolina at a gas station. They went to that location. All they found was a crushed phone on the floor. 3 days later, Atlanta, Georgia State Police pulled Pan's parents over, but their son was not in the car. They were told that their son was a suspect in a homicide, and his parents had no reaction. Now, I know if I was pulled over and I was told that my son was looked at for a homicide, I would have a reaction. His father stated that their son called them and said that he needed help and to bring cash. So they went and picked him up, and he had them drive to Connecticut. Then at some point, Pan told his father that he wanted to drive. So he drove a long, long ways. Then at some point, he just stopped and got out of the car and walked away. They said that he didn't talk the whole time he drove, that he just stopped and walked away. Pan's mother said that they ended up in Georgia, and that she stated that she thinks that he left and he killed himself. Now, the detectives did not believe their story. They now knew that his parents would do anything they could to help their son. So they decided to sit back and wait and see what the parents would do. 5 weeks passed without a solid lead. The detectives were starting to get worried that Pan may get away with this and they may not find him because of his background. The detectives started noticing that the parents had a lot of bank activity. They were taking out large sums of money, about $5,000 to $10,000 at a time. The parents then rented a car. After they drove for a while, suddenly the GPS system went dark. This was very interesting because their son had disabled several of the vehicles he rented for the shootings. The parents rented another car for a second time, and they were noticed on a surveillance camera in Georgia at a mall. Pan's father was buying a computer, and this was a time of COVID, so everybody had masks on. But about 10 minutes later, the surveillance video shows Pan's father walking with another individual, and it was a male. Again, the GPS on the car went dark, but then when they were on their way back home, it started working again. Now, a few months later, on May 4th of 2021, they rented another car for the third time. But this time, they were not alone. They had another couple with them. They ended up in North Carolina in a hotel. After the parents had checked out of the hotel, the detectives went and spoke with the hotel clerk. The clerk told the detectives that very late the night before, Pan's mother came up to them and asked to borrow their phone. This was huge. After she used the phone, she deleted the phone number, but they were able to find the number, and it was a boarding house near Alabama State University in Montgomery. So the authorities went to the boarding house and found Pan's room. They knocked on the door. He just came right out and stated, "I'm who you're looking for." He had about $20,000 cash on him, his father's passport, 7 SIM cards, and a computer. He was arrested for the homicide of Kevin Jiang and brought back to Connecticut. He said he was innocent. Forensic tests showed that Pan's DNA was on the gun found and the ammo found outside of Arby's. And Kevin's blood was also found on a hat that Pan was wearing that night and on the gear shift of the SUV he was driving the night that Kevin was M'd. The evidence was overwhelming. On February 29th of 2024, 3 years after Kevin's homicide, Shan Pan pled guilty for the homicide of Kevin in exchange for a plea, serving 35 years in prison without parole. Now, do you think Pan would have gone away with this if he hadn't got stuck on those railroad tracks? Please let me know in the comments below. Please stay tuned for this week's featured missing person at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching True Crime Voice for the Voiceless. Please like, subscribe, and share if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.